Hi, it's George Nordhaus. This is Monday morning. Have you noticed that the last 4 or 5 Monday mornings that we've had are going to new places we've never been? That's exciting because there's so many things that are taking place in this world now, the changing world of communications. I was talking to Steve Anderson the other day, and he said, hey, well, maybe we ought to talk about the payment processes. What do you mean, to the agents, to the company? Yeah, the way the agents pay theirs, the way people, what's it all about? And I think, well, that's pretty new, isn't it, Steve?
Well, it is, and George, we often as agents don't consider the way people pay us, and so many things are changing. There are so many new ways that consumers are interacting with the businesses they want to do business with that we as the industry really need to start keeping up or continue trying to keep up, and I think one of those is actually how people want to pay for their insurance policies. Seems very simple, and in fact, I will say that direct bill came in. Gosh, and I was trying to think, George, how long ago? 30 years, maybe 25?
Well, I can't remember.
I mean, it came in a long time ago. Yeah, and frankly, it really did help solve a problem for agencies when carriers kind of put in direct bill. And boy, I was around. I remember the conversations about how direct bill was going to, remove clients from the agency, and they were going to go direct to the company. But the reality is agents are very poor bankers. They don't collect money very well. So it really did help, I think, at the time, agencies be able to take that burden of collecting money away. And so we had the direct bill, certainly for personal lines and small commercial today. I would say the vast majority of those payments are made to the insurance company. Well, one of the things that got me kind of thinking about this was, frankly, a report that I got a hold of and read from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And they have been tracking since actually before 2003 how people use money and pay bills. So this particular chart is showing over the years, so 2003, 2006, 2009, and 2012, the percentage of all payment transactions that are non-cash. So this is the top one there is actual paper checks. We have next ACH, Automatic Clearing House, a online, EDI type of payment process. We have credit cards, and then debit cards, and then that final little sliver at the bottom is actually prepaid. Some of those prepaid cards now that you get, for example, like as rebates, often you'll get a card, right, instead of an actual check or cash. Well, if you look at this, the amount of paper checks as a percentage of all transactions, payment transaction, has been cut in half, more than half.
Wow.
And that really caught my attention because when policy holders, agency clients want to pay, we require them, if they're paying the agency through an agency bill process, we're requiring them to use paper checks because we don't take electronic payment. But look at the percentage changes. So, certainly a little bit of increase in ACH process, a little bit of increase in credit card, but look at the increase from 2003 in the amount of debit card transactions being done. In fact, you look at the new younger consumers, the millennials, the Gen X, Gen Ys, they don't carry cash. And I'll tell you, from an old guy like me, I always have cash. I always have several $100s of cash with me no matter where I'm at. That's not the case. It's the debit card. And another incident, I actually read this on a LinkedIn group where an agency, CSA, was talking about payment in their agency. And this situation she's describing actually happened. A young person came in. They were out of college. They were buying their first policy on their own, their automobile policy. They bought a rental HO4 policy for covering their stuff. And went through the application, got all the information, signed the application, and was ready to bind the coverage. And the CSA asked for a check. And this person from across the desk said, a what? And
What?
here's my debit card. Here's my debit card.
That's all she knew.
And that person, that's all that person knew. And that person left the agency without buying.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
we could not take money in the way. Now, again, could have done go onto the carrier site and some of those kinds of things. Yeah, maybe. But we really need to think about this process. And here's why. And these are just a few bullet points, kind of talking points. But why in the world would agencies take payments back on themselves? Well, because consumers want to pay you electronically for both direct bill and agency bill. And that's why I have that both up there. Now, direct bill, right, the carrier handles all of that. But the problem is payments is the most common customer action and interaction that an agency can have with their customers. I mean, think about it. If I'm paying monthly, if I'm paying on an installment plan, I may have from 2 to 10 different payments per policy period. And right now, certainly with direct bill, that's being handled elsewhere. In my own personal case, I pay my business policy with Hartford, and I pay my personal policies with Fireman's Fund electronically online. Why do I need the agency? Because I completely now bypass the agency and go directly to the carriers to make my electronic payment for my policy.
That's a good point.
Premium.
Why can't, Steve, let me ask you something. Why can't an agency take a credit card? Or just you don't have the system? Or
yeah, well, there are a couple of issues here, and we do kind of have to split or understand direct bill differently than agency bill. There are agencies I know of that take credit card payment. The problem is the cost or the fee that they are charged to process the credit card.
Right.
And so I've done the numbers. On a $500 policy where an agent makes, let's just assume 15%.
Okay.
Right? So they're making $75 commission.
Mm-hmm.
A credit card will charge somewhere between 2 and 4%. American Express actually is even higher.
Wow.
2 to 4% on the $500 just to process the payment. So if you do the numbers, that charge is on the $500, which represents over an 18% reduction
oh my gosh.
in the agency commission just to take the charge card. So I'm not saying there aren't issues and things that we need to look at and overcome.
Wow.
But here's my main point, and it really is this last line. Agents do not upsell and cross-sell. And I'm getting pretty adamant about this.
I noticed that.
George, what would you say? What would you say is the average number of policies per personal lines accounts for an agency in the United States?
I would say 1.7 or 1 point something like that.
And 1.7 is a common number. The best number I have that I'm comfortable with is 1.44.
That's all. Good God.
And I think that's absolutely terrible. And every agency I talk to tell me that they cross-sell and upsell, and that can't be right. If you only have 1.5 policies per account, you are not upselling and cross-selling. Now, obviously there are reasons why you might not, but people buy 5 to 7 different types of insurance.
Right.
And my point here is because we have taken that payment and moved it off to the carrier, we don't have the opportunity to interact with that client. And even in the electronic format,
that's it, right there.
We can't say, right
Right.
there, we can't say, hey, by the way, I noticed that we don't have your auto policy, but we have your home. You know, you can get some discounts. Or how about an umbrella policy? Or we don't show that you have any life insurance. Or how about travel insurance? Or how about pet insurance, right? All of these different lines that we're not even asking whether they want to buy from us. And so we kind of bemoan the fact that, you know, people are going online and going to all these different places, but the reality is we're not even asking them to buy from us.
Good.
And I think that payment process is a piece of that puzzle.
I think it is,
now,
too.
Again, I want to emphasize, and I want to emphasize this. This is a big issue. I mean, and there are some stumbling blocks there. But I actually, to actually put a slide together for you, I went and I actually looked at some agencies that I would consider to be better marketers, more active, kind of had some things in place, and I'm not going to name them. I had to get to the sixth agency before I even could find on their website a way for clients to pay. So here's a very typical, this is the sixth agency I went to. Very typical payment spot you see here. And again, I've taken names off, so I don't want to, I'm not going to mention any names.
Good.
But if you look here, here's a place. Please choose your insurance company to pay. So I've got Travelers and Hanover and Hartford and Progressive and Columbia and Allied and West Bend, all great companies. And if I click as a client on the Travelers, guess where I go? Now, let me ask you this. Do you see the agency name anywhere here?
No, of course not.
Do you see any reference to the agency or even any link to come back to the agency website?
Wow.
Now, of course, I'm on the Traveler site now, so why do I need my agent? And I think we have built in this mindset of what do we do, with this process. And again, I've said it now a couple of times, and I really need to emphasize the fact that it is a complicated process. And frankly, I've done quite a bit of research on, what this might look like or how we could do it. What do we tackle as an industry? And frankly, I think we need a payment hub. In fact, I've wrote an article on LinkedIn about a payment hub, a place where the agency can send their client from the agency website, but it's all branded with the agency. And that place is a processor. And again, they're really stringent security and technical things that a processor has to do. PCI compliance, payment card industry, it's a huge issue to protect that information. So this is not just a willy-nilly kind of thing. But that payment hub then for direct bill would actually go, in this case, let's say, to the Traveler system and say, here's the policy number, how much does this person owe on their direct bill? And then we'd be able to actually, the site would be able to present, here's the amount due, here's how to pay, client, you choose how, credit card, debit card, check, electronic check, and then once they pay, now the agency can display some information about upselling, cross-selling, some other things, or reinforce the fact that, hey, we're here to help you in that process. Now, that's a complicated, obviously, we've got lots of moving pieces in the industry. We've got to get our agencies on board. We've got to get our automation vendors, because that's where our information is, and we've got to get carriers on board. And I'm not suggesting to replace the carrier, payment processing system. This service could actually plug right into their existing, so the carrier could still control the payment. But it's the experience of the consumer with the agency that I think that would, really help at least. So it's a big issue. And let me put this up here because I've actually written a white paper kind of describing the payment card industry, describing how charges work, and some ideas at least as talking points. You can go to steveanderson.com, and actually on the right-hand side you can click a button there to download the paper. Or if you want to experiment with some text marketing, you can actually text the word pay to that phone number, and I will ask for some information about where you want that paper sent and send it to you.
That's great. It's really helpful. I don't think the agents think about this very much. I didn't hear it in the day-to-day operation. Very seldom.
No. Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm starting to talk about this, because I think it's another example, frankly, of the technology 25 years ago when direct bill came in wasn't there. We couldn't even think about doing this. This was not even an idea we could address at all. But the technology today is so much different, and people are online more. And if we could get some cooperation, and again, I've been around this industry not as long as you, George, but a long time, and that is a piece that's going to be hard. How do you get the carriers to provide this information to the agency, or is there a way that an agency could get into their agency management system for agency bill and be able to get the amount of money owed to the agency and display that in a secure environment so that somebody could actually pay?
That's a good idea.
And I will tell you, there are some methods and mechanisms to help the agency lower the cost of this process. And it's very technically difficult, so I don't want to get in the weeds here. But I want to say that there are some things that an agency can do today. In fact, there's an agency that I know of in Georgia that has a online program for photographer insurance. It's simple quoting. It's a bot policy. It's kind of a standard, type business. And they were taking credit card payments for a $500 bob. And it cost them over $4,000 a year just to take credit card payments. And they've been able to rearrange how that payment process works and reduce that cost significantly. And I will tell you, there are state by state, every state kind of has different laws and requirements on convenience fees is the term that you'll often hear, basically charging to take a credit card. And that's the piece that agencies have to be extremely careful about. There are consumer protection laws. I believe now in 11 states it's actually illegal to charge a fee to take a credit card, not from the insurance side, but the consumer protection side. You also have state insurance departments which may have requirements on how payment is processed. So that's where the complication factor comes in. But what I'm hoping is that we can begin the conversation of how do we solve this problem. Because frankly, if we don't solve it, other people will. In fact, already are. You think about the direct, right, all of the direct options. We talked recently about Google coming in. Do you think Google has a problem with taking electronic payments?
I wouldn't think so.
And so we've got to, as an industry and certainly as agencies, begin thinking about how do we engage with the consumers the way they want to be engaged. And that is not just personal lines, by the way. That's all small business. That's even larger businesses who have their processes now that save, actually, electronic payments can save a huge amount of expense in that process.
Wow. This is fascinating, Steve. I'm really glad that you thought about this, because I don't go to, I go to agency meetings or whatever. I don't even hear this as part of it. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of, I always tell people I think about weird things because I haven't heard of. Well, frankly, I haven't heard about it. I've had some conversations with some providers that have some services, some credit card stuff, and it just really dawned on me that this is a huge amount of transaction opportunity that we just are ignoring. And so as one of those ways to help round out an account, because that's what's going to keep somebody with an agency long term, we need to think about where those transaction points are and how we can insert ourselves. And I do think this last slide here is, there are huge opportunities available, but, and this is the key, nimble enough to seize it.
I like that, nimble.
And our industry, our industry is not known for being very nimble.
I would say,
And that's something that, I do think we need to work on changing.
Well, I do too.
Every business will have to be nimble.
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's just terrific. Now, if people want to know a little bit more, or they want to get involved with you, how can they get in touch with you? There you go.
Well, here's some contact information. Certainly my website is a primary contact point at steveanderson.com. I also have, George, as you know, my Tech Tip newsletter. That's a free newsletter that comes out every week that I invite people to try out to see whether it provides useful information. And I've recently started a radio show, podcast, on-demand audio called Glad You Asked, which are answers to your most pressing insurance technology questions. So I basically take a question on each episode, and provide an answer to that.
That's terrific. If you want to find the link to that, or you can just ask Steve here, but it's on our. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago we ran a link to it on the email that comes out to you. And in the meantime, tech tips. If you don't take tech tips, excuse me, it's short, sweet, and to the point. But boy, are there ideas in there. I've been borrowing ideas from Steve for the last few years. And tech tips. It's so easy to get. Just tell Steve you want it, and you're going to have it. And each month. It's a great piece of work, Steve. I love tech tips.
Well, I appreciate that, George.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the recent ones I did, I was reading and stumbled across Google Earth, which a lot of agencies know Google Earth and use it for their imagery, and
right.
and they have a version of that called Google Earth Pro, which costs $400 a year, but it adds quite a bit of capability. And I just came across that Google literally just a few weeks ago made it open and available for free. So that's a $400
wow.
savings to an agency, and I think a great tool for using in the sales process, the service process, and being able to visualize graphically information. So that's just an example.
You go to Google Earth. Google Earth.
Yeah,
okay.
Google Earth Pro, right? And actually, the tech tip will give you a link directly to the page.
Perfect.
That explains how you
Perfect.
can get a free license code to go up to the Pro version.
Well, you never cease to amaze me, Steve, and I really appreciate this is a good one. You're bringing the new stuff to our attention all the time, and it makes me look like a hero to people out there that never heard of it. But of course, I never heard of it. But you have to keep telling me, and I think it's terrific. So, don't forget, folks, that you can go back to the email that came, and you can always go to the quiz flash each week, and that's kind of fun. I enjoy that too. I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it. And Steve, again, I really thank you for being so cooperative with us on so many deals, and I look forward to keeping on going. How about you?
Oh, I certainly do too, George. It's a great industry, and I'm going to try and do my part to help it move into the next century.
Well, you have, and you've helped it a heck of a lot, and I'll say that. So I'll see the rest of you next Monday morning.